Hey everybody, it's Mike Guglielmi here from Sons of a Pitch Soccer Podcast. We are jumping right into our Inter Miami 2020 MLS season preview. Inter Miami, one of the two expansion sides this year, along with Nashville SC, playing in Fort Lauderdale at their new stadium that's getting put together right now and as a temporary home, which will then turn into the home for Fort Lauderdale, their USL side. Uh, Lots of movement, of course, for the expansion team, bringing in lots of players. Of course, they've got to build out an entire team. So some of these guys that were brought in, Matias Pellegrini, a transfer from Estudiantes, Julian Carranza, transfer from Banfield, Christian McCoon, George Acosta, Victor Ulloa, Jay Chapman, Grant Lilliard, Jerome Kieswetter, Ben Sweat, Albus Powell, Lee Wynn, Luis Argudo, Mikey Ambrose, Luis Robles, AJ De La Garza, John McCarthy, Drake Callender, Denso Ulisi, Juan Aguadello, Roman Torres, David Norman Jr., Robbie Robinson, Dylan Nialis, Nicolas Figal, transfer from Independiente, Lewis Morgan, a transfer from Celtic, Will Trapp, Andres Reyes, most recently, Rodolfo Pizarro, the transfer from Monterrey, and Will Trapp. Only two players out. Brian Meredith from the expansion draft was traded to Vancouver, and Jairo Quinteros, transfer from Valencia, was loaned out to Club Bolivar. So lots of movement in, some big names on this list, some names that have a lot of MLS experience, some big, big time DP as well, with Rodolfo Pizarro, who had been rumored to go to Chicago for quite some time, and then ends up in Inter Miami's setup after they paid the release clause. Nick, what are some of the names that really stand out here that for Inter Miami FC? CF, excuse me.
Yeah. A lot of these names really do stand out because they picked up so many players in the expansion draft or have been trading to get some MLS veteran presence and experience in their first season. The one thing we do have to announce, Boca Juniors midfielder Agustin Almendra just announced today finalized a loan deal with Inter Miami. So he'll be making his way up to Florida as well, and we'll get to see his style of play come to the MLS. But as far as kind of the big names, obviously it's your big loan or your big transfers, your international guys, Pellegrini as well as Pizarro. But really what's interesting to me was to see Roman Torres get picked up. I was kind of surprised that Seattle let him go, but I'm happy he found a home here in Miami. Get to keep watching him crush strikers in that back line in Miami. And they grab goalkeeper Luis Robles, like formerly of the Red Bulls. This guy was almost goalkeeper of the year last year, and the Red Bulls let him go, and he ends up in Miami. So those are a couple of the big names. Of course, you've got Ben Sweat and Albus Powell, Lee Wynn, guys who have been all over this league, who have made an impact in this league. I just wonder, and we'll get into our projected starting 11 towards the end of the episode, or towards the end of this review. Are they going to go heavy MLS vets, or are they going to really make a new roster and just go for it from day one? Are they going to bring in these international players and try and transition them a little bit with guys like Lee Wynn, with guys like Juan Agadello, who, by the way, Mike, sorry your TFC team couldn't get a deal with Juan Agadello. They had his rights and then couldn't get the deal done and transferred him to Miami. But he did. He pulled a hammy in his preseason game, so we'll see if Agadello can get back on the field sometime soon. And a guy like Will Trapp, this guy has been a major MLS name, obviously not on like the scoring or a huge fan favorite guy, but he has had influence with the style of play in Columbus, with his influence on the national team under Greg Berhalter. So this is a very reliable, a smart player. Is he going to get the start in Inter Miami and help kind of transition this team from just some preseason games to a legitimate MLS squad from week one? So we'll talk a little bit about it more in our kind of projected 11. But again, is the new coach going to go MLS vets, let's ease into the season, or is he going to say, here's our best 11, and let's go win some games?
Yeah, I think he's going to put out his best 11 right off the bat. Miami's not, they're in the business to win right now. I mean, they came out and said one of the reasons why they hired that new coach from Monterey, who had lots of Champions League experience, is to get out and win Champions League. So you're not stepping into something and saying, well, we'll take the slow approach here. Even though we signed a coach who can't play in that league for at least another year at a minimum. So, they're going for it. And what I really like about the way that they've built the roster so far is that they have a good amount of MLS veterans that, they're getting a little bit older. Ramon Torres wasn't, he wasn't starting every game in Seattle. So like Juan Aguadelo, he's older by MLS standards, even though he's still really young. But he's been around the league for a while. Good veteran there. Will Trapp as well. He's kind of getting a little bit older. He's not old by any means, but they have a lot of MLS experience, and these guys can at least form, 5 or 6 of these 11 players and really have, they're not going to get run off the field because they're all brand new to this league. They understand the physical type of play. They understand going through the summers of, dog days of summer, so to say, in MLS. So I really like the way that they've built this out with that heavy MLS vet presence. One guy that really strikes my attention is Lewis Morgan, the transfer from Celtic. This guy apparently is pretty good. So I'm excited to see what he can do coming over from Celtic, one of the
Excellent
biggest clubs.
scouting right there, Mike. He's pretty good.
Hey, you know what? I'm just going by what I saw, and especially the YouTube videos and whatnot showing skills. So I like that signing as well as, I think that Jay Chapman from Toronto FCU they picked up in a trade can really be a good piece coming off the bench. If they need some type of attack, kind of to play in that number 10 role a little bit at the end of a game, he's not going to light the world on fire. He's not going to become an MLS All-Star in one season, but I think he can really help the team and given a chance to really break out because the kid is he's not a kid anymore. He's 26, but since he's come up with TFC, he just has really never had the chance to get out on the field because of the people they had in front of him. So that might happen here, but I expect that they picked him up to have that depth piece, and I'm interested to see what he can do towards the end of the games. So that's kind of my notes on the roster itself being built up. Now let's talk a little bit about the designated players. So as of today, there are 2 out of the 3 designated player spots filled by Inter Miami. First off, Matias Pellegrini, the 19-year-old Argentinian. Estudiantes. So, I mean, this is one of the biggest clubs in Argentina. Trained with the U17s. I think made some appearances with the U20s as well. Otherwise, no, senior team caps for him yet. Expect, him and Pizarro, the next DP, Rodolfo Pizarro, who came in from Monterrey, to really play well together. I think that they could set up to be a really dangerous team. And speaking of Rodolfo Pizarro, he was a $12 million transfer fee from Monterrey. A very interesting. We talked about it a little bit on our last podcast episode, Nick, on how this guy was rumored to go to Chicago for so long. And then to the point where Chicago made multiple offers, worked with Adidas to try and sweeten the deal and put more money into it. And it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden you see him getting off a plane in Miami to play for Inter Miami. I got to think the coach had something to do with that. The fact that he was familiar with him and really understood his play. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Rodolfo Pizarro, Nick?
Sure. Well, we said it in a prior episode when we announced that Pizarro did sign with Miami. If you're young and have lots of money, would you rather be in Miami or would you rather be in Chicago? So, something Bulls fans can relate to, how they never get free agents up here either. But he's had 34 goals in about 276 appearances in Liga MX. So he's not a prolific scorer, but he is always a threat. Now, we got to kind of walk that statement back a little bit. He started his career playing defense, actually, and only in the last several seasons did he move to more of an attacking midfield than a striking role. So it's likely they'll use him as more of a number 10 and a playmaker than a main goal-scoring option. But with a team, we went over the roster, you're going to have several goal-scoring options. And I think that's what's needed in the MLS because you have teams like LAFC and Atlanta who rely so heavily on their stars, Carlos Vela and Joseph Martinez. But the games those guys aren't available, it's a struggle to find an identity. Or like you saw with the LA Galaxy last season, if Zlatan was unavailable or unable to get service, what did they do for goals? So Miami, I think, has taken a really good approach about bringing in several scoring threats, and we'll see who steps up on a game-to-game basis. The other big piece about Rodolfo Pizarro is that he has been on many successful teams. He's won 4 league titles in Mexico, 2 CONCACAF Champions League titles, as well as a Gold Cup with the Mexican national team. So he knows what it takes to be on a winning team, and he knows the makeup of a winning team. And maybe that's another reason he ended up in Miami. No offense, Chicago. Like, he saw that Miami is ready to win now rather than Chicago, who looks to still be building up for the next couple 3 seasons. So that's my kind of scouting report on Rodolfo Pizarro. And it's a great transition into the next question we've been asking. Who's the most important player on the team? And it's going to be Pellegrini or Pizarro, I think, as far as on the field play. Maybe you want to talk about an MLS vet who can control the locker room and really be an emotional supporter, an emotional kind of center for the team. But as far as the on the field play, it's Pellegrini or Pizarro. It's the DPs. And I'm leaning Pellegrini because he is both the present and the future of this Miami club. He's 19 years old. He can make an immediate impact because he's already played in the top flight of Argentina for a year and put up some good numbers. So he can make an immediate impact. And then again, at age 19, he should be with the club for a couple, 3-4 years at least. Or they flip him, make, 12, 15, $17 million on a transfer fee, and then turn him into the next wave of Inter Miami stars. So that's my take on it. Now, Mike, do you agree? Do you disagree? Who do you look for to have the biggest impact on this Miami team?
Well, as far as the biggest impact, it could be Pizarro. However, I think Pellegrini, based off of being that designated player coming in as one of the most touted signings, as he was one of the first signings that they had. I think that he could really it really rests the most on his shoulders. For the success of the team by scoring a lot of goals. Pizarro's going to score some, he's going to assist some, and that service into Pellegrini and the other strikers is definitely very important. However, I agree. I think Pellegrini is going to be that most important player because if he does not, live up to at least the hype of being a young designated player, fresh out of Argentina and one of the biggest clubs with Argentina, the team, it's probably not going to bode well for them if he doesn't have a successful season. So I'm going with you there on Nick on the most important being Pellegrini.
Excellent. So now let's turn to the other side of the roster, the youngsters who can break out, who can really prove themselves this season in the MLS. And there were a couple names that popped off their roster. First, Lewis Morgan, even though he's 23 years old, we still are considering him a potential breakout youngster. He's coming in from Celtic. He's a Scottish international, but never really could find the time or crack the starting lineup over in Celtic. And again, feeding off of Pizarro and Pellegrini, if he plays more of kind of that poacher role as a striker, or if he makes those nice runs, diagonal runs behind the defense, a little 1-2 touch back in the net, he could really put up some stats. But Mike, you're looking at George Acosta as your breakout youngster. Tell us about him.
Yeah, so the fans are really high on George Acosta being that breakout youngster from our little chats on Reddit a few days ago. He is the first basically the first homegrown signing that is from Miami. So he's a hometown kid. He grew up there. That's his home. So I think that's another reason why they really like this kid. And he's got the youth national team experience as well. He's the first youth international for Miami, so he kind of wears both hats there. So they're definitely high on Acosta. Acosta for sure. Very excited to see the young players that come out of Miami. George Acosta is the first Miami-born player, so I'm rooting for him to get some minutes. So definitely some love there from the fans. So I think if you're looking for a fan favorite and a breakout youngster, he's your guy.
Well, how much of that is kind of hometown favoritism versus objective scouting? Not that we're always objective ourselves, of course.
Exactly. And you know what? He's got the youth national team experience. So, the kid's obviously decent if he's playing for the youth national team. They don't just pick up slouches for that spots.
I certainly hope not. As far as a projected starting 11, when I threw this out here, I used the 4-2-3-1 formation. It was from the preseason game they had played while I was prepping the notes. Let me give you their starting 11, and we'll see if there's any changes that we'd make come first game of the season. Obviously, in the goal, you've got Luis Robles, and then in the back line, they started Ben Sweat, Roman Torres, Nico Figal, and Dylan Nealis. The defensive mids, Victor Ulloa and Will Trapp, and the attacking midfielders, Argudo, Wynn, and Pellegrini, and you had Pizarro up front as the striker. So that's what Miami trotted out. That's what they ended up losing 2-1 with in their preseason game. By the way, Inter Miami, here's your trivia. First ever goal scored for an Inter Miami club, Rodolfo Pizarro, who hadn't actually been announced yet as a formal player on the squad, but he was there for the preseason game and found the back of the net. So it'll be a season of firsts, obviously, for Miami. So keep on the lookout for a lot more fun trivia like that. But Mike, what changes do you possibly see from this starting 11 they used in the preseason?
Not much. It's so hard to tell what kind of 11 they're going to put out. I don't know a ton about the new coach from Monterrey to know exactly what he would be, who he would favor and whatnot. Haven't spent any time down there in training camp to, watch to see what's going on. So it's really hard to tell. But I think that Carranza, once he gets healthy and returns from his injury, I think he'll definitely be starting up front. Might change the formation up a little bit, maybe don't do a 4-4-2, something like that. But that's a guy who, they brought in with Pellegrini from Argentina. And I think that he'll definitely get into that starting 11 once he's back from injury. Other than that, it looks pretty good to me. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about some of these guys to really throw them into the mix on the starting 11. But I like the mix of MLS veterans that are in there as well as the new guys.
Absolutely, and I almost kind of have to walk back some of the things I said about Pizarro earlier. I saw him more as a number 10. It looks like they're going to use Lee Wynn as that guy, that center attacking midfielder. Obviously, he's got the MLS experience. He's got an excellent ability to find the strikers to get those assists. And they played Rodolfo Pizarro up front. So I was saying Pizarro might play a little more of a 10 role or an attacking mid role, but based on the preseason game, he's their striking option. I don't know if that changes. Again, we talked about NFL teams here playing, really vanilla formations and running vanilla plays to not tip their hand. I don't know if MLS teams are going to be doing that or if the Inter Miami squad is still kind of figuring things out. So from what I had seen, I thought Pizarro would play more in an attacking midfielder role, but I guess Miami has other plans, and that's why I am on this side of a microphone and not down, field side coaching squads and getting contracts with the pro league here. So I'll put that out there in all fairness.
Yeah, I definitely expect him to be in that 10 role. Lee Wynn, I don't think he's got what it takes to be a starting number 10 in this league as of now. I think back in his days with New England, he could have fit that bill, but whatever, even going to LAFC, and now with Miami, I don't see him being that starting number 10, not for a franchise like Miami that's expecting to win now. So I definitely think they'll put Pizarro there once they get Carranza back, as well as, possibly try some other guys up front in the rest of the preseason and see how they do. And who knows, maybe there's more signings, right? I would assume that Miami's going to use all three DP spots this season, whether that comes in the summer transfer window, whether they bring somebody in now. I doubt they'll bring anybody in now. Probably will wait till the summer. But, I can definitely see them bringing a big signing in that would be a striker to go up front to really have that kind of knockout punch of the three attacking minded designated players to have a number 10, a winger, and a striker.
So where do you think they end up at the end of the season then, Mike?
Well, it's really hard to tell with the roster that they've got now. It's kind of just a piece together at this moment. You don't really know what exactly they're going to be looking like come the season, because they're an expansion team, and we discussed it in the Nashville season preview that it's extremely tough to put together a prediction and a preview for these expansion sides. So my best guess is, to get into the playoffs, kind of the lower end of the playoffs. I think that would be a success for this team. And thinking maybe fifth to seventh seed, something like that, probably like an away playoff game in the first round, and possibly even win that playoff game to make it into the second round. So that's kind of the ceiling that I'm thinking. As far as the floor, it could just be ugly, and they could end up at the bottom and pull another Cincinnati. I don't expect that to happen, but we saw it last year with Cincinnati in the beginning of the season. The roster that they had put together, we were even talking about, hey, it's a decent roster. They've got some decent pieces there, and they fell apart. They were the worst team in MLS history to start out. So I don't expect to see that happen with Miami, but you never know with an expansion side. It could happen, and we'll see. What are your thoughts on the predictions as far as ceiling and floor goes, Nick?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I see them getting into the playoffs as a best case scenario. And how great would it be for the manufactured rivalries that MLS wants to have expansion club Miami make the playoffs in their first year, and then just a little further around the state is Orlando, who has yet to make the playoffs in any of their seasons at MLS. So if the MLS wants to manufacture a rivalry, and if you want to put your soccer tinfoil hat on for a minute, maybe get Miami and Orlando in the playoffs together and see what happens, and see if you can somehow shake up some sort of matchup there. That would drive ratings. Again, I'm putting on my tinfoil hat. I know it sounds a little crazy. I try not to be the conspiracy theorist guy on the show, but I feel like I'm doing that more often than not. I think that would be something fun to see. But yeah, essentially, if they make it into the playoffs, great season for them. Otherwise, if the wheels fall off, if they can't adjust, if their MLS veterans are just that and they're just too old and can't do anything, then yeah, they're looking at the bottom of the Eastern Conference finish. So Inter Miami season kicks off March 1st at LAFC. What a welcome. I mean, how would you feel going up against the best regular season team in history?
Especially on the road.
Yeah, right?
That's a heck of a welcome, going to one of the toughest places to play with such a great atmosphere like the 3252 down there in LA. So it should be a warm welcome for them. Not so warm, I'm assuming, from the LAFC fans. But side note, that hey, the Inter Miami fans, if they are playing an LAFC team that played in Lyon last night in the Champions League, they'll have a good shot, because that LAFC team was not looking very good against Lyon, and it really should have lost by more than the 2 goals that they did. So good luck, Miami, in that first game. Thanks for joining us for this preview. Make sure to subscribe and like this video, and turn on your bell for notifications on YouTube, and make sure to tell your friends about our podcast, and find that anywhere you can find your podcast: iTunes, Android Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, all those different places. So thanks for joining us for the Inter Miami preview.